Today is Thursday, April the 23rd, 2015, and the location of the interview is the Veterans Center, Walla, Washington. I'm interviewing Craig Buchanan, Vietnam veteran, and Craig left the service as a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. Also, he was born on June 6, 1944, D-Day, and Dixie Ferguson and Vic Phillips, the videographer, are conducting the interview. We represent the Blue Mountain chapter of the American Red Cross. And again, Craig, what war and branch of service did you serve?
I was in the Vietnam War, 1971-72, U.S. Army, Infantry.
And you already answered it, it was Vietnam where you served. All right, and were you drafted or did you enlist?
ROTC, Oregon State University, where I was commissioned second lieutenant.
Okay, and so you were at Oregon State, Corvallis?
Correct, yes.
And where are you from?
Walla, Washington.
All right, and why were you interested in the ROTC in the military?
The high school, Walla High School, had ROTC. And when I went to high school, it was mandatory. So all males did ROTC in high school. And so it was kind of a carryover from there. Oregon State, all the land-grant schools, you had to have 2 years of ROTC at the colleges. Land-grant schools like Oregon State, University of Oregon, Washington State. And so I did those 2 years and liked it and got a scholarship to continue my junior and senior years. And so I like the structure and I like the Army.
And why the Army?
Well, I didn't like the water. And so I thought briefly about the Marines, but they're of course on the water. And then if you're in the ROTC, Naval ROTC, you had to take physics. And I wasn't about to tackle physics. Later I found out they had what's called a platoon leaders course that I could have done like in the summers and got commissioned that way. They went straight over to Vietnam. Because one of my fraternity brothers, he went through that course and came back like maybe 6 months later, and they had a policy, if you got 3 Purple Hearts, you got back. 6 months he had 3 Purple Hearts and was back. He was a recruiter on campus.
Wow, what a story.
Yeah.
Wow. So looking at your birth date, you were right in the heart of the Vietnam War period.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was, let's see, right out of college. What did you study in college?
History, political science. So I got a co-major of actually education and military science.
And knowing you, Craig, I'm not surprised, your studies. So right after college, then you were ROTC, then what happened next? Did you go right in?
Well, I applied for graduate school. My dad's, I said, I want to go on in, like you said, it was right in the middle of the Vietnam War. Because I graduated from high school in '62, so and then like our friend Al, he was over there in '65, I think, and so all that's ongoing when I'm in college, and so you got pressures you see in the news, and but I was kind of like gung ho. So to answer your question, I applied for graduate school and got admitted to graduate school. So I went 1 more year to graduate school, but I was on active duty, but without pay or allowances. So I got 1 year promotion time, and at that time. And 1 year you were first lieutenant, another year you were a captain.
Nice.
So, yes, the only trouble was there was a disadvantage because you had no experience. So here I am, like when I went to Infantry Officers Basic, Airborne School, Ranger School, that I'm a first lieutenant, so I'm outranking everybody else there. I had no clue, I had no background really, except what I got at college and the summer camp we went to.
A little bit of stress there, having to perform.
Right.
Yeah. So where was your basic training then?
Well, it was an ROTC camp at Fort Lewis, Washington, 6 weeks. So I did that.
Up the road a piece.
Right.
And 6 weeks of that.
Yes.
Did you like it?
It was fun, particularly meeting the students from all over the West went to Fort Lewis. So kids I'd never even thought about the different schools were there and mixed together, and so it was a lot of fun.
When you were still in college, were you meeting veterans coming back from Vietnam, hearing their stories?
The one I mentioned, the fraternity brother, and then there was another one, I managed some apartment complex. He was over a year and came back. And you could tell there's a change in him. This individual was a communications officer, but he still had, each battalion's got a commo officer, and I never really talked to them too much about it. But you could tell they
Like
changed a little bit. Just a little more, maybe a little more sure of himself, a little, not confused, but like, wow, I didn't like that. And then, because they were just at that point going to graduate school.
Yeah. So you're up at Fort Lewis then, going through that, and you're going, what's your next move?
So once I was commissioned a second lieutenant, 1 year in graduate school, and then I received orders to go to Fort Benning, Georgia for infantry officers basic. And then following that, that's, I can't remember how long it was, 6 months maybe. More so the Vietnam War was going on full time. So I was there 67-ish, 80, 68. So I mean, it's full blast going on. All our instructors are 1 year combat veterans coming back to teach at the courses. And so after the 6 month officer's basic, then it was the 3 weeks airborne school. After airborne school in the evenings, I'd run more and do more exercises because I was going to ranger school after that. So.
Okay, right there, airborne. What did you think about airborne? Were you excited about doing it?
Well, yeah, everybody goes, I want to be an airborne ranger, live a life of fun and danger. You know, and they do the cadence calls, you know, as you're running around. They do all those. And the sergeants there were phenomenal on the cadence calls they could call. And so, yeah, and even before I got to Fort Benning, I'd run and stuff and get in shape for the officer's basic and then the airborne school. And being the senior lieutenant, I was the first guy out my stick, you know, the aircraft jump school. So, but they train you so well that the sergeant says, go, boom, you're gone.
What's that first jump like?
Well, it's like I say, it's like you're in there, and they do the stand up, hook up, shuffle to the door, green light, go. And he just, go, and boom, out the door. You stand in the door with both hands each side of the door. And when the sergeant says, go, boom, you're gone. I did it 5 times, first man out the door.
Just kind of automatic?
It's just automatic.
Was it thrilling?
Yeah, well, it was because they can't really copy that in the training. They take you up to the 250-foot tower and with the parachute laid out, and then they cut you loose and you come down. But it's still not the same because there's no shock of the chute opening. And one little funny anecdote was they have, during the ground course, a 34-foot tower that you climb up. They hook you up, and then you're hooked to like a static line, but it's a cable. And then the jump master will say, okay, go. And then you jump out the 34-foot tower, and then you're supposed to go 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, and then check your canopy, look up. Anyway, so my first jump off the tower was I yelled Geronimo. I watched all these movies, right? And so I yelled Geronimo. Of course, the TAC sergeants, you know, the tactical sergeants, they heard all that. And then, of course, when I get down the end of the line, they're right there jumping all over me to what did I say?
Well, what mattered?
Well, because it's a procedure. You need to, for safety, you need to be able to count that. And at the end of 4, if that chute hasn't opened, then you need to pull your reserve.
Okay, gotcha.
So there's a reason for doing that.
Gotcha. What time of the year were you at Fort Benning, Georgia?
So I reported there somewhere in June. And so I went through jump school in October, and then a ranger school just before the last class before Christmas break.
So you were there all summer long?
All summer long, through all the Georgia heat, yeah.
Yeah, how was Georgia training in the summertime?
Well, it was hot. At jump school, they would have a bathtub full of ice. So if you had heat problems, they'd put you in the bathtub. And then they had shower, like misters that you could go under to get cooled off too. They had that pretty well under control. And I can't remember anybody in jump school having heat problems.
That is good.
And the airborne, or the infantry officers course is very good. Very, like as I said, combat returning guys, given the classes. So, you know, some up for the DSC and all that stuff that they got
well,
there.
You're hearing all this, Craig, and you know the direction you're going. So.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, these type A personalities. Hey, we're ready.
That's how they get you bagged.
Yeah.
I mean, not that expression,
Yeah.
but anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see, jump school, ranger school. Now, you didn't have to go to ranger school, but you picked it.
Correct. It's like when I was designated a distinguished military graduate, which let you then be a regular Army officer rather than reservist. And then you can choose, or at least put down what branch you want, whether it's armor, artillery, or quartermaster. Anyway, so I put down infantry with like really.
You sure?
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure I got in the infantry. If I was going to be in the Army, I wanted to be in the infantry.
What'd your
branch.
mom and dad think of that?
Well, they liked me being in the military. They weren't too hot about the Vietnam part of it. Because my dad kept saying, yeah, after the war was over and I was still in the Army, he said, you need to stay in there, stay in. So he was a little upset after then I gave up my commission and came back and farmed.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I got it. I still stayed in the reserves.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, so back to the courses at Fort Benning. The infantry school, the airborne school, and then Ranger school. Of course, everybody's really nervous about Ranger school. I had no clue. A lot of the kids at college, they were in like little Ranger units and stuff, and they're called the Raiders or whatever at Oregon State. And a sad note to the Ranger, that's what they were called, I think, Raiders. This big guy that was in charge of it, the student, I got a Reserve Officer magazine one month, and there's his name right on the wall, Gerald Harr.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, so we're all psyched up to go to Ranger school, and I had no clue. I hadn't done any of this Raider stuff, and so I really don't know what to expect, except be in shape. Okay, so I get there, and then they want to know who my Ranger buddy is. I don't have a Ranger buddy. And so okay, there's another guy, he doesn't have a Ranger buddy either. And so you guys are Ranger buddies now. I still remember his name. So I'm like 5'9", 165. This guy is 6'1", 210. Which I think that'll help until you go to like the hand-to-hand combat pit stuff, and you got to throw this guy around, and he outweighs you by 30 or 40 pounds.
He just lifted you up.
Yeah, and then one day we're in there, and the Ranger attack didn't like the way when you finish up these throws and stuff, you're supposed to kick the guy. Well, in reality, you kick him with the point of your boot or whatever. Well, in the hand-to-hand combat pit, you would hit him with the side of your foot. Well, but the Ranger said, you're not kicking him hard enough. And the guy's name was Quit. He was a Filipino guy. Kick him harder. I could hardly move the next morning when I got out of my bunk. It's like so sore. Anyway, so he was my buddy through the whole course. He finished too, and I finished too, and he helped me immensely. Because one of the hardest parts of the whole school was not losing the sleep, and the lack of food was the road marches, because they're forced marches.
What do you mean by forced marches?
You had to walk as fast as you could, and you can't run. So it really pounds your legs really hard. And of course, the one platoon wants to beat the other platoon. At least the Ranger TAC wants you to beat them. You could care less. Anyway, so you got to hurry up. Anyway, so then we push on harder. Anyway, I got tendonitis in one foot, Achilles tendonitis. And so I remember my cousin said he played football in high school and college. He got tendonitis one time, and he cut the back of his shoe out and just taped it up. So I said, well, that's a good idea. So I cut the back of my boot out where my Achilles tendon was. I didn't tape it up, but every time I went through water and stuff, the one foot always got wet. And then I'd put my hand on my Ranger buddy's web gear stuff, and he could like drag me along or guide me and keep my speed up. So I finally made it through without any real problem.
Good buddies.
Yeah. I never saw him again after that.
No kidding. You didn't go to...
I never saw him again.
No?
No, I don't know where he went. But what was interesting, in that Ranger class, it was West Point. Almost all West Point. And they are cliquey. And they've gone, of course, every summer they go somewhere. They're there all year long. And then guess what? They rate you at Ranger School in the squads. And so I was right at the bottom. Well, guess who was ahead of me? All these West Point guys. They know each other. They don't know me from anybody. And so the Ranger captain, the TAC, would say, how come you're at the bottom, Buchanan? I said, well, these West Point guys are ranked ahead of me. Oh, no. Anyway. Anyway, so that's how they rated them. That probably still do it the same way.
A question about that. Did that, as West Point graduates, did that really make them better Rangers?
Only in that they've probably gone through that a couple times. Preparatory things.
Sure.
And all that. I mean, the West Point training is very good. But because I had some, like juniors when I was a company commander, that would come in the summer. And then they would be with my company during the summer training and stuff. Not Vietnam, but in another assignment. And so they got all that kind of first-hand experience.
Sure. Did you, survival school, did you go through that?
No, didn't do
No
anything.
survival school?
No. Just what we got taught in Ranger School.
Right, okay.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, how long did Ranger School last then?
It's like 8 or 9 weeks.
Okay. Did you feel ready after all that training?
Well, I was ready physically wise, but all the patrolling things I never had before, so it's firsthand. So looking back on it, I'm thinking, I'm amazed I made it through there. Well, but you don't get a lot of sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you got to pay attention to what they're telling you. And then you start to fall asleep if you're sitting down, so you stand up, and then you start to fall over when you're standing up. And so then you got to pay attention to what they're doing, because pretty soon it's going to be your turn, Ranger Dixie, to lead this patrol, and you're just like a little guy walking along, and all of a sudden your name gets called, and like, huh? I don't know where I am. Well, you better find
real.
out.
Now it's getting kind of real and personal.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, you graduate from Ranger School. Did family come down for that, or did they do that?
Well, when they graduated, when
was
we
family come
graduated, it
for
was
that?
in
Uh-huh.
Eglin Air Force Base.
Uh-huh.
And it was like everybody growls, and they pass
Yeah.
through. But after I got back from Vietnam, I was at Fort Benning for the advanced course, and my brother was going through Ranger School. And so I did see that, actually, and they did it at Fort Benning.
All right.
And so I got to see that.
Uh-huh. So did you get immediate orders for Vietnam? Did you get a little break to come home?
Well, that was interesting, because I went home. So home is from Georgia going all the way to Walla Walla, Washington. And then no orders. Week went by, 2 weeks went by. Finally, I called them up. Oh, hello.
Forgive me.
They did. I used up almost 30 days of leave waiting for my orders. So finally, actually, it was kind of a godsend, because guess where I went? Alaska. They sent me to Alaska. I told my wife. She says, we're going to Alaska. Where? That state way up there. Anyway, so that's where we went. I went to
That was your
infantry.
first assignment?
That's my first assignment,
Uh-huh.
to Alaska, Fairbanks, Alaska. They had other units, and they're still there. There's 2 bases are still, Fairbanks and Anchorage. So anyway, so I went to Fairbanks. We got there, and it was like 45, 50 below. Yeah.
Now, you had already been married
Yes.
at that time?
I was actually married in college, when I was
In
going to
college.
college.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Did she stay here?
No, it was called a overseas tour. And so it shipped everything up there.
Okay.
And
But she was here while you went through training?
No, she was at Fort Benning too.
Okay. Mhm.
Right, because I got there in June all the way till, well, I think I drove home in December or something, right after Ranger School was over.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
then we had an apartment.
Okay. So it was a family assignment to Alaska?
Yes.
Okay.
A company tour.
Company. there
A
you go.
company tour.
Company tour, right. And what were you assigned to do?
I went to Infantry Battalion, and then my first assignment was to an airborne company there.
To do what?
They have an airborne company in the Infantry Battalion. One company was airborne. And there was a West Point officer there. He was so upset that I got that assignment. And I mean, they had great soldiers in the company. It was the only airborne company in Fairbanks.
But to do what?
Well, it was an infantry company, but airborne.
But
And so
in
we would-
Alaska, though?
Yeah.
Doing what?
Well, we would have contingency plans, and like we would have be a recon kind of company. And so we made several jumps up there. I went to a jump school from Fairbanks, went to Anchorage, and then went to a jump master school there. I said jump school, but jump master school. And I did
But I'm
pass.
still not getting why infantry in Alaska.
Oh, well, there's early warning sites that we had roles for. The other role was we fought forest fires.
And did you?
Yes, we did.
Really?
We took our fishing poles, and so I was like the operations officer for the battalion, and we would go, and during the summer, it's daylight almost the whole time, right? So we would go, we lived in some kind of a barracks way out in the middle of nowhere. And so I had one crew fighting the fires, the other guys were fishing and resting.
And how long were you there?
Well, that was the other part of this thing. Well, I was there 2.5 years. The Vietnam War is going on, right? I got my platoon leaders, and then I was a company commander also. I was the operations officer, and then a company commander, and then I got officers coming and going. I mean, they're coming to, yeah.
Uh-huh.
1 year, boom, gone. I'm still there. So I think part of it was when I was appointed company commander, assigned, they started a policy to keep the company commander there as long as they could. So I was a company commander for a year, and then got my orders.
To Vietnam.
To Vietnam.
Because you knew that she was going to fall sometime, I assume.
Yeah, I wasn't going to really call them up, I had a nice assignment. And so finally I figured they'd find me pretty soon.
They kept losing you, Craig.
I guess. Anyway, so I never called them up, and they finally got a hold of me. And then I said, hey, I've been in Alaska for 2.5 years. Can't you send me for some training before I go to Vietnam? So they sent me to Fort Benning for some refresher on artillery calls and things, mortars. So I was 2 weeks, and then poof, over.
And then right from Fort Benning over?
I was trying to remember that. I can't remember if I came home first. I think I came home first on a short leave, and then flew out.
And your wife came back to Walla?
Right.
Uh-huh.
So she actually stayed with her parents in Portland, Portland,
Okay.
Oregon.
And you're winging your way to Vietnam. By this time, it was, 69, 70?
Actually, 71.
71.
Right. So all of my college classmates that were going through the ROTC, they were on their second tour.
Oh, man.
And I was just getting over there.
What a fluke.
Yeah. Right. So I figured God had plans for me elsewhere.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sure what they've been, but.
Well, then, where did you land when you got to Vietnam?
At Benoit.
And
I think it was. No, it could have been Tan Son Nhut, I think. Probably. Well, I think it was. And then we went from there, because we were on a bus with the screen on the side of the bus. And and then we went to Benoit.
Right.
And then they were trying to figure out where to send us. So you always have rumors about this and this unit, and that's happening there, and this other unit's happening there. And I said, okay. So they sent me to the 101st Airborne Division, which was way north, up at Camp Evans, Phu Bai, MR1. I guess that's
which would have been
on the
central or even north.
The furthest north,
For the
MR, military region.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I get there, and they said, well, you're going to go to G2. I says, no, I'm not. I'm going to an infantry battalion. And so I go in, I see the G2 officer, is a full colonel guy. And he says, I need to go to infantry battalion. That's where to a rational person, you wouldn't think that was a good thing to say. I want to go to an infantry battalion, right?
And G2 was intelligence?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's the Class A personality thing. And so I said, I got to go to infantry battalion. All my cohorts are in infantry battalions. Nope, you're not going there. So they said, well, I had a master's degree and I had a top secret clearance, because when I was the operations officer, the battalion commander said, you need a top secret clearance, which takes a long time to get. It's the FBI and blah, 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 all that stuff. They do background, they talk to the people you put down on the paper and all that. So I had top secret. And so they pulled me off for that and sent me to the G2. I said, I want to go to the battalion. And he said, nope, I don't want to be G2, but I'm artillery, so you're going to stay here. So what they did is they made me sensor officer.
I'm sorry,
Sensor.
Which is
not like we would think about, like human resources. It's, with sensor and feelings and all that. This is a sensor, but it's like ground seismic sensors, audio sensors. There's a new program that they're bringing in. They've been ongoing for about maybe a year, where they can monitor activity on trails and roads, and is pretty sophisticated, probably pretty expensive. That those some of them were planted by hand, and some were planted by aircraft, like the F-4 Phantoms would fly over, and they had the ability to drop these like little torpedoes into the ground, and look like a little tree stub sticking up, but it would provide information back that they were monitoring with aircraft flying overhead, and then it went from there to Phnom Penh, Thailand, and then they were monitoring. Of course, it's not real timely, some of those, and then just to monitor traffic coming down. And the smaller ones we work with.
Traffic coming down, the VC on the trails.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so then they would drop ordnance on it. Of course, that's not very timely, but mainly more for information and the traffic flow and all that. Trucks, tanks, whatever. And but what we did more locally was the units could put them out. I had a guy at each of the brigades, and they could put them out in the battalions on perimeters to monitor what was going on.
Was this everywhere going on?
Well, at least where I was in the 101st. I don't know if they had in other units or not. But one of my officers I had, he volunteered to extend 6 months so he could go into the sensor program. I thought he was a little wacko, but
get him an evaluation.
Because I didn't want to be there, and he volunteered to be there. But he was a pretty sharp guy.
Well, backing up just a little bit, Craig, I just wanted your initial impression when you landed in Vietnam. What were your initial impressions when you got into, if it was Tan Son Nhut?
Well, I think one of the first ones was how fast the plane descended. It came down real fast because they didn't want to spend a lot of time like a normal
commercial aircraft.
Right. It was commercial, but it still came down real fast. By that I mean circle, 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 boom, on the ground. None of the real slow approaches like you see at commercial aircraft or airline fields. And then the heat and the smells to capture. You can't really put it in a bottle and do it. And then you see these people standing out in the rice paddies with one leg rolled up, pants leg. I was like, that is so weird.
And just to back up just a little bit further on your flight over, lots of time to think about this. Plane full of men, I assume, soldiers.
Yeah, right.
Can you even remember that flight?
Well, a couple of things I can. One was I had to go to the bathroom. Number two, real bad. And then that plane had just taken off. You're supposed to remain seated. I was on the aisle down to the bathroom.
Funny things you remember.
So that was one. And then we landed in Manila in the Philippines. The aircraft arrival facility, what do you call it? Anyway, it had been firebombed. So it was all burned up. And then, not burned up, but all these all black and everything. And then they let us off to use the bathroom facilities, but they weren't working.
Oh, wow.
So that got plugged up real fast. Not by me, but I contributed.
Was it just quiet on the way over?
A little bit. I don't really remember too much. I didn't know anybody, you know, and some guys have been over there before. And then, I know, as we got, they sent us to, I can't remember before or after I talked to that colonel, they sent us to, they called it the Screaming Eagle Replacement Camp or something like that. I mean, it was way out, it's kind of like nowhere. And then I met a couple of guys who'd been there before, and they were complaining to me because I was a captain with no experience of the terrible security that was there at the camp, and wanted me to help do something. Well, we didn't really do much, but then it was kind of for them to orient us to what's going on. This is how things work in the 101st, and orientation.
Now you're up north at this time.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can remember first guy, we were in barracks there, that this one, he'd been there before, so he didn't take anything off that night. He had his boots on, he had his web gear, he was ready to go. And of course, I'm doing my skivvies and stuff, you know, and like everybody else.
Jammies.
Yeah, not jammies, but. And he was probably the smart one of the whole bunch.
Did he talk a lot about, wow, things have changed, or
that comment,
you guys better be ready? Or?
No, that comment was made about things have changed, but less combat. That came from the S3 people, the G3 at the division.
No, that's logistics?
No, G3 is operations.
Operations, okay.
Because we kind of worked in hand with the operations people. And so that was a comment I heard off and on, was that things were quiet, relatively quiet, versus what they had been on their last tour.
And why did they volunteer to come back?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I probably with these colonels and stuff they did to get the ticket punched.
Right. Oh, right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Well, what were your living quarters like? What were your?
Okay, when I finally got to the 101st and they assigned me to the sensor unit, the reason they wanted the top secret clearance because I was one of like 15 people that had access to all the intelligence in the division. They had the regular Fubai compound, well, it was a big area, and then they had the 101st G2 area, and it had a big fence around it, and then on top of that, the razor wire. I was one of like 15 people that could go in there, because we got intelligence from all across Vietnam. And then I found out later there was a price on my head because of what I knew.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't really know much.
But they didn't know you didn't.
Yeah, they didn't know that. Anyway, so after I left Vietnam and everything, I couldn't go to certain areas, countries, because they're communist countries or whatever. They didn't want me going there.
Because of the intelligence that you had, and
yeah.
the reason being maybe got captured and you get information, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. Well, was there any typical day?
Well, because I had this runs 24 hours a day, I worked the night shift for a while, so that meant I had to sleep during the day, and then that's hard to do because it's so hot. And then what's interesting too is I could tell when people that didn't live in my hooch came in just by their walk.
What does that mean?
Well, if you walked in, I could tell that you didn't belong in that building just by the way you walked.
Interesting.
Yeah, because your senses are heightened.
Wow.
Anyway, so normal day is we get these sensor activations, and then we would have.
Now, what does that mean?
Well, whether it was ground noise, audio, there was no pictures, but then it would be translated back to either the brigade, which goes, how the brigade or the structure is in the military. It's like, and the infantry is like, you got your squad, platoon, company, battalion, and then brigade made up.
So were you in, what
So
kind of facility were you in?
The what?
I mean, could you just describe what it looked like where you were in the machine and everything?
I was in a bunker.
Bunkers, that makes sense.
Right, so for the 6 months, as longer than I was with the 101st, I worked in a bunker until I would go out and check on the fire bases where these guys had the stuff set up, and then we'd fly out there.
Okay, yeah, this is really interesting. So did you literally have monitors?
They had monitors.
You were watching?
Yep, the brigades actually had a monitor machine at the brigade level.
And what were you seeing on that monitor?
I don't know. I had an officer that was in charge of it, and I never really queried that much about it. But what was interesting that you mentioned it, they sent me, remember our friend Al, when he came ashore at Benoit and Vung Tau, they were like the first U.S. troops there. They had the Australian unit with them. Well, when I got there, Vung Tau was the R&R center.
Yeah, I think it was for quite a while.
Yeah, it was very nice. I spent a week there.
Yes.
At Vung Tau R&R center, going to this school.
In country R&R.
Yes. People from all over would fly. It's the whole length of Vietnam to get down there. So I went, and then I got some time at the beach and stuff, and go downtown, and then they would teach us about these sensors, and but I don't really remember how it showed the activation, but it would give something that, like, whether it was say a red line that increased or more lights went on or whatever.
And it would pick up any kind of movement?
It would. I'm not sure how close you would have to be to it, or whether you had to step on it. It would. They had two types: the seismic, so pick up vibrations, which may have to be like, if it was a water buffalo, it might tell you, oh, that's a water buffalo or an elephant. Or this is a vibration more set up with a human step.
Okay, so if it was a human step, then what?
Then you would know something there is not supposed to be there.
And you would.
And then you
what?
could do call in mortars, artillery. Generally, didn't do airstrikes because it takes too much time.
But couldn't it be a friendly fire thing? There could be a mistake?
No, because it's generally done at night, and so you would know where the patrols were running, and so they would set up on trails, and of course you'd have to go out there and do it. Somebody would have to do it, and then, or you set out in front of your perimeter, and certain areas where you think that they might come this way.
Would you literally have them outside your base? That would make sense.
Yes, they did that too. In fact, we had one that resulted in a helicopter crash, killed the guy. That there was activation outside. This was at Fubai, and they went out with a Nighthawk or something they called, with the helicopter with the spotlight on it. He got vertigo and crashed, killed him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the division safety officer was all upset about, rightly so, that we have to watch these activations to make sure that when it happens, it's really a valid thing before we send somebody out.
Yeah. Were they really effective?
I'm not really sure that they were. And maybe the long run where they had them on the Ho Chi Minh Trail might have provided some information. But even then, see, they're being dropped by aircraft, and the VC or whoever's coming down the trail would know the aircraft flew over there, right? And they saw things fall, and there was no explosions. Right. And they were pretty well camouflaged. It looked like a little tree. And you would have a hard time finding it.
Was this new at the time you were there, or had that been going on through the whole war?
No, I think it was pretty new. Pretty new.
Do you think they're still using that, or is that a different type of war?
Well, now we got satellites and the drones and all that. So I think it's too cumbersome to do that. Now we just put like a Claymore mine out,
Right.
which says, this side towards the enemy, I mean, it sounds kind of, but if it's dark, you can feel the lettering, and you want to make sure, because it's pretty wicked.
Okay, so if it picked up the enemy, because I've heard stories where there would be companies of BC, so that would be
That would have
really
to make a lot of,
obvious.
yeah.
Yeah. And would they immediately send a patrol out and then?
I don't think they really send a patrol out just to alert them there's something there, because at night they're not going to send a new patrol out. And but it may have provided some information, particularly like on the DMZ, where they knew the infiltration was coming apart, and they put them down.
Did everybody know about these?
I don't know. I've never really gone back and pursued,
Yeah.
like you're asking about, was this widespread, or were we the only ones that had it?
Yeah.
I never really thought about it. I didn't really like it.
Yeah, because this is news to me.
Yeah, and then then we would put all this together during the night, and then we would brief the general. This would be the operations general, the 1-star, that was charged of operations on what went on. And then he would say, well, did we put any ordinance on it? Well, yes, we did. But he never really asked how timely it was. We did, but it was like 2 hours later.
Wouldn't that be critical?
Yeah. I don't remember ever asking that question.
Yeah, interesting. And now, I'm sorry, tell me again, did you get training for that back in the States? Or?
No, that's when they did down at Vung Tau.
Oh, you learned, I'm
down
sorry,
there.
I interrupted you at that point.
Yeah, so they sent me down to Vung Tau, and then what was interesting, I had to find my own way back.
They keep losing you.
Yeah, I had hitchhike, the whole length of Vietnam to get back up to
Now, how
to
do
the
you
101st.
Hitchhike by plane?
Yeah, by plane. Yeah, and not on the road, but by plane. I go to the airfield and I say, "Who's going where?" Blah blah, and then get to the next one. I have to do the same thing again. Finally, I get back up there.
Gosh, that's really something. Did you get to see much of the country, or was just over aerial?
Well, let's see, I got there in August, and then through the winter. And the winter up north, it gets kind of cold. And so I had to ride home for long johns, actually. It's not really cold, but it's the damp cold. And then the clouds settled in, and you can't do much. Anyway, so one of those days, I was going to fly out with one of the pilots to the Ashaw Valley. And
why?
just to see what was going
Explain.
on, blah, blah, and by ourselves, which was real smart. Anyway, but we couldn't take off because of the cloud ceiling. And so then, it wasn't too long after that, they had a helicopter got shot down, and they had to bring in the Cobra gunships and stuff. And then they said, you can't go out by yourself, you have to have escort. So I didn't really fly out there anymore. So, but my guys that would go out there and plant these, they get shot at all the time.
Oh, no.
Because they're just hanging their feet out the helicopter door or side,
Wow.
drop them down and.
Sitting duck, flying ducks.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, I'll say. Were you up at that base then most of the time you were over there?
Well, I was over there only about 10 months because they started to draw down. So then the 101st got word they're going to stand down. So I got another one of these tough assignments. Al just can't believe I get these assignments. And but I volunteered for infantry.
Look at the draw.
I know. Don't throw me in that briar patch, that kind
And
of
then,
thing.
I'm sorry, you went to the infantry?
Well, okay, no, I didn't. So the G2, assistant G2, I didn't really like him. Anyway, so they made me property book officer. They kept shrinking the division, shrink. And the property book officer, I knew what they did.
And what does that
It's a
mean?
warrant officer. So warrant officers are very specialized people. They know exactly what they do, and they don't go outside that range. Like infantry officer could do this, do that, go do this. They do that, and they control all the property in the division. In other words, like if you have a watch, if it's a special watch, it's on the property book, or like a rifle company has a property book.
That could be huge.
Immense, yes. I became property book officer for the entire division.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But at that point, luckily, the equipment had been traded down and off and transferred or whatever. So we have one convoy to go from Phu down to Da Nang. So I'm the ranking officer again in this convoy of mixed match. It's not a combat convoy. It's like a road grader, a truck, jeeps, blah blah, all kinds of weird stuff.
But you're still vulnerable.
Yes. Anyways, I had some good NCOs. So they said, "Hey, Captain Buchanan, this is what we need to do." Okay, let's do it. So they put the road grader in front. Well, because that gets the pace.
Sure.
So if you put it behind it, it'll soon get left way behind. So they use the road grader as a guide on speed. And but I mean, so if you get mortared or something, like this is just like chaotic type of convoy. But they've been doing it for days and days, and so I just happened to be, that was my day to go down there. So I got this Jeep, I think I'm driving it, and a trailer, a little Jeep trailer, and it's got this big debolt safe on it. Debolt safes probably cost thousands and thousands of dollars. They weigh like 2,000 pounds. You keep top secret stuff in it. So we get down to Da Nang, go to the property disposal yard, and if I had lost that safe before I got there, I'd probably still be paying for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so they park it in the yard. Big crane comes over with a big clamp on it, picks that safe up, and then takes it over and drops it in a pile of junk.
Well, the safe.
Uh-huh.
What was
There's nothing in it. It's empty.
Oh, okay.
But it's the property disposal. That was it. And then, yeah, oh yeah.
Craig, can you describe the logistics of America going to war? Is it truly amazing?
It's just absolutely mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
It's just,
We know how to do it.
we know how to do it. Oh yeah. And there's always these stories that they didn't know what to do with this F-4 Phantom plane, so they buried it.
Taxpayer wants to know that.
I bet that happened. Yeah. Well, when I left, I had my own M16. I had my own 45 that other people had given me. It was not in the property books. And so when I left the 101st to go, then I went to the 1st Cav, I just left it in the Tactical Operations Center. I said, "Hey, see you guys." And I just left my M16 and 45 there. I might take the 45 with me, but I left the M16 there. Oh no, I had that down with the 1st Cav. So when I left Vietnam, I had my own gun.
You could take it on the plane with you?
Well, no, I don't mean leave Vietnam, but when I left the 101st, went down to the 1st Cav, which is down at Benoit. I had my own M16, I had my own 45 that other people had given me. And then when I left them, I just left it in the operations center.
And
then they went
nothing
home.
said. By the way, because the 1st Cavalry moved all the way from Central Highlands clear down to Benoit then?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, and did you stay with them very long?
No, it was only, I had like 2 weeks between, where was it, 101st and the 1st Cav, somewhere in there. I went to, there was a sensor place at Rahn Bay. I can't remember why I spent 2 weeks. I think it's between the 2 assignments.
Vung Tau, Cameron.
Rahn Bay. It's a gigantic base. It's the biggest one, I think, in Vietnam.
Yeah.
We got mortared and rocketed one night. I didn't hear a thing. It was so big.
Yeah, yeah.
And they had a lake in there. They had a beautiful beach. Of course, I found it. And then, so yeah, and then I'm not quite sure what we did there. Something with Arvins maybe.
Arvins being South Vietnamese
Yes.
soldiers.
And then left that and then went down to the 1st Cav. And actually, when I was telling you about that dropping that debolt safe off, I was so upset with the 101st people that I stayed an extra day or 2 in Da Nang.
Well, they didn't know where you were anyway, so it didn't matter.
Well, then one night at Da Nang, I don't even remember where I have to tell you this one too. But when the 101st left Phu, we went to Da Nang. Remember China Beach, the movie?
Mhm. Sure did.
Guess who was the officer in charge of the time of Da Nang R&R Center? Me.
You just know how to fall into it, Craig.
I can't believe it.
It's that charming smile.
I still have the little name tag that says Captain Buchanan, OIC, China Beach.
And did you watch the TV series?
A little bit, off, Yeah, and anyway, so I'm there until the 101st actually left, right? The security there was terrible. Anyway, so I had one of my guys, hit with an M79 grenade launcher. He's kind of like a lifeguard protector guy down at the beach. And he is loaded and he shoots it off somehow. And he goes up and hits the corrugated metal over the roof. and then goes in the water down where everybody is.
Oh my
But it
gosh.
hadn't armed. So then I had to get everybody out of the water, and we had to call in the EOD people, and they couldn't find it, blah,
Oh
blah,
my
and all that
gosh.
stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And then one night, we actually had some action. I would kind of like sleep 2 hours, wake up, check things, sleep, wake up, day after day like that. But during the day, I didn't do much. That's kind of later on. And so one night, there's this machine gun goes off across the beach. And so I'm asking my guy, I said, what's going on? I don't know. The Arvins are shooting at us. And so anyway, so what it was that there was high pressure to get prostitutes into the camp.
To get them into the camp?
Into our camp.
And you're okay.
Right. Anyway, so the Arvins saw these people sneaking along the beachfront, and they opened up on them. Well, they missed them all, but then my colonel wants to know what's going on, and anyway, so there was actually some fire at China Beach. So then we finally got, I think then after that, then I went down to the Rahn Bay and then down to Benoit. To the
You
first
were
camp.
literally all over the country.
Yeah, it's mainly hitchhiking, like I said. So then I got down to the first cab, completely different atmosphere with them. They're really nice to work with. The 101st had too much of a, I don't know what you call it, where each one wants their ticket punched and they don't work well.
Top heavy?
Yeah,
Top
well,
heavy.
they were too career-oriented, which isn't bad, but I mean, they're out for their own assignments and blah, blah. They didn't work well together. Then the first cab was just the opposite. Worked really well together, really nice people.
Interesting.
And so they made me, because they didn't know what to do with me. Right, again.
They never know what to do with you.
So they, I mean, they're really nice about it. I had my own little not hooch, but room and stuff. And we got mortared there too. And, but I didn't hear anything. I said, why should we go in the stupid bunker? I don't hear diddly. So I just stayed in my room. And then I could hear them out in the bunker, but we didn't hear anything. Nothing was even close. So, I mean, I couldn't see anything to get too excited about. Anyway.
How long would they keep you in the bunker?
Well, they must have had some kind of all clear deal, come on out kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so they made me liaison with the, what was it, MR3?
Which is what?
Well, Military Region 3. I
Was that
think
like 2, 3 Corps?
1, 2, and 3,
Mhm.
and 4 was way down the Delta.
Mhm.
Anyway, so I'm not sure which one Benoit was, but at that time,
I think it
72.
was 2, wasn't it? 2?
Might have been.
Mhm.
And anyway, so the U.S. general that was working with the Arvins was, I forget his name now, darn. But he was a CG when I was in Alaska. And, his name escapes me.
Mhm.
Anyway, so this is when the NVA made their big attack. We thought it was going to come in February. Well, it came in August or sometimes in there. And so he was the only guy to provide information on what was going on. He was flying out there with the guys rather than like a recon unit going out, flying out. He was flying out there. And that's when they had locked in with the NVA, North Vietnamese Army, not DC, North
Yeah.
Vietnamese.
The big kahunas.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. And that's when the onslaught attacked.
Okay, then you're saying that's when they came down into Saigon, took over is that what you're saying?
No, that
was later?
was 68. That versus.
Oh, I'm
Okay, so
referring
this is we knew it was coming because we announced we were pulling back, blah blah, and we knew at some point in time they're going to come across. Well, we pulled out of the MR1 up by the DMZ, and a couple of the Marines I knew that were up there, they got attacked, and a couple of them actually got hurt pretty badly because they were on Army, was the Air Naval Gunfire, they call them Anglico, whatever it stands for. They provide and coordinate the airstrikes and the artillery and naval gunfire and stuff. Anyway, so they were still up there when I left. And actually, I got a little book, it's called The Bridge at Dong Ha, which is, this Army guy counts, they're blowing the bridges, and we're blowing the bridges of this one bridge that he blew up to stop the people coming down. But that was an MR1. So I'm at Benoit, which that's like north of Tan Son Nhut, I guess, or
It is.
Saigon.
Mhm.
And anyway, so I'm the liaison guy with the first cav, because they got gunships going out there. They lost some gunships too. To the headquarters of the Arvin there that this general's flying out of. And so that was ongoing. Then I go from there over to the main MACV headquarters. Get my little Slurpee. It wasn't a Slurpee, but whatever. And then,
Craig.
so then we had, I think it was before that, we had a big monsoon came in. I'm not sure when that came through. But in 24 hours, it rained 1 inch an hour. It was like 2 feet of water. It was right level where you sit in the Jeep. It was coming right across there. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, so quick.
Yeah, so anyway, so
Now,
then.
we're in are we now in 1971 or 2 at this point? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Craig, you're saying that they were prepared because they actually took over Saigon, Tanzania in 75, the
Later.
embassy?
Later, yeah.
But at that point, they were...
They had not got that far.
But they
and I'm not sure.
They were in motion,
Yes.
even
right.
at that point?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And so we had American advisors in this Loch Ninh area. They came in with tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was pretty touch and go there. Anyway, so I was the liaison with the first cav to there and around.
What were you doing, like a liaison? What would you...
I was carrying
typical-
stuff.
Huh?
Just carrying stuff.
Carrying,
I don't know what it was. And I'm not sure what I... Yeah, anyways, but it was kind of interesting at the MACV headquarters.
Huge.
They had a long ramp you walked down to get underground. I mean, it was like hundreds of feet, it seemed like. And then finally you're down there, and then you got all their operation stuff down there.
Yeah, just, again, getting back to the logistics
Yeah.
of Vietnam. And the whole time that you're there, and this, if this borders on a political answer, you address it any way you want. When you're looking around, seeing what's going on, and at the time you were there, what were your thoughts about America being there, and were we going to be successful? Any thoughts on that when you were there?
When I was there, I didn't really think about it. We knew particularly earlier when I was at 101st, I spent Christmas Day to go back to the 101st when I was at Phubai and Camp Evans area, that this G2, Assistant G2 comes in and says, Craig, he probably said Captain Buchanan.
Probably.
It says, get your gear, you're going up to Quang Tri.
Which is way north?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's the last major city before you go into nothing, and then there's the DMZ. Well, Quang Tri was where they had a big battle for Quang Tri in '68.
Mhm.
Anyway, so we get up there, it is really spooky. It's like you're talking about in the fire base. I mean, you can tell that we're going to get overrun any second. I mean, it's quiet.
It's just in the air.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
can just tell. And so they got this advisor there. He wants to work on the officers club thing. I says, what? They flew me up there on Christmas Day, right, to be the liaison from the 101st up there. And I'm not sure I really did anything except sit around and listen to these guys. They had some Marine guys, these Anglico guys there, and this Army colonel who was really wanting to kind of get the officer little club building or room fixed up. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Well, at that time, I mean, what was the mission up there?
Well, it was basically just to monitor things, because we had no real unit in Quang Tri. We had advisors with the ARVNs, and so just kind of monitor things. And that's kind of what I did to see what they were doing. And there's nothing really going on because it was overcast and bad weather.
Were they preparing for the ARVNs to take over eventually? Or did they ever think that was a workable plan?
Well, that's what the goal was, but I didn't really work with any ARVNs, so I don't know.
Yeah. But getting back to your thoughts, the time that you spent there, did you still think at that point there was going to be a victory?
No, I mean, everybody knew we were leaving, and we knew at some point in time they're going to come across the border again.
You all
Oh,
felt
yeah,
that?
yeah, especially when I was up at Quang Tri. I mean, you
Uh-huh.
knew they're coming. And then, but I didn't quite have that feeling when I got back down to the first cav, and then they did attack. I guess because we got a little complacent sort of feeling, well, they haven't come yet. And they were thinking it was going to be like another Tet in February, and that didn't happen.
Was the morale still good, or you said there was a winding down? Was there a change in attitude? Of course.
Well, there was
uh-huh.
a big change in attitude amongst the soldiers that I worked with.
Which was?
The enlisted one, was that because if you have a commander like me who want to tighten things up and keep things secure, then you became the target.
Mhm.
So I was left with a pistol
Mhm.
next to me.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Because I got threatened several times.
Wow.
By Americans.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Are you saying that it was kind of the morale was kind of
Well, everybody-
slumping, dipping down, just because you knew?
Everybody knew we're leaving.
Yeah.
Right. And why do anything too
Why bother?
dangerous? yeah, we're getting out of here.
Exactly right.
Right.
At the whole time, Craig, did you have all the confidence that you were going to come home? I mean, there was no, well, you never knew, but.
Yeah, I never really went over there with the idea I wasn't coming home.
You thought you were coming home?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, you never thought,
Yeah.
it's kind of, everybody, it's not like World War II where you knew in some of the battles, like, okay, I'm dead, I might as well
Right.
do this.
Right.
I never had that at all.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Was the communication going on back home the whole time? The regular mail and
Yeah,
phone
mail
call
was
every
pretty
once in a
regular,
while?
right? I mean, my
Oh.
grandmother sent me actually, and they got over there with some apples, delicious apples.
Wow,
You believe that? They
Washington.
made it all the way over there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, delicious.
Yep. Delicious apples. They were so
Yeah.
hot, and oh
Wow.
man, those were so good.
Oh, I'll say so. And you hoarded them.
Uh-huh. I didn't give them to anybody, actually.
What's that?
I didn't give them to anybody.
Oh, no,
I ate them all, I
Like
think.
gold, you bet. Well, things are winding down, and at that point now, you're in the Benoit area with the first cab,
Right.
and it's 30 days, and you're going home.
Yep.
And did you keep any kind of a short timer's calendar, or didn't much?
No,
matter?
because actually we didn't know what the date was that we're going.
Mhm.
And actually, I think I found out what the date was on my birthday.
Now we are.
Like, oh, we're going home then? Or I can go home then?
Uh-huh.
Yep. And then what was so frustrating was I had an Army watch, right? They took that Army watch.
Why?
I don't know. I said, I don't care, take it, you can have my clothes. But I thought that was so
That's
petty
odd.
that they would take this little Army watch, which is like it was a wind-up, it wasn't self-winding or anything, it's the OD thing.
No big
But-
loss, yeah.
No, like, why they couldn't let me have the watch. I came in with it, actually,
Huh.
so.
You, one day you got your orders, you're going home, and did they give you a short notice, or 30 days?
It might have been 30 days at the most,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what were those last few days like before you came home, and where did you fly out from?
Well, I don't think it was too different, except I think in the back of my mind that you think, oh man, something's going to happen before I get out of here.
Short timers, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's be careful going across this street or whatever.
Yeah, you bet.
And then,
Don't want to die here.
Yeah, you're right. And I can kind of see why you want to die at home, not in some foreign country.
And explain that. It's okay. It's okay, Craig. You love your country.
Well, I don't know. It's just kind of a feeling you get. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Because you love America, and you want to, that's your home.
Yeah, and where you are is foreign.
You bet.
Right. You
You
wanna go
bet.
home.
And I understand that feeling so well. You want to be home when you die,
Yeah, yeah.
because you don't want to be buried in some strange country. No one has any meaning to you there.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I get it, yeah. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. That's probably was a common feeling, don't you think?
I think so, right,
Uh-huh,
right.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know how much of a patriot you are and how much you love your country, so it makes a lot of sense. So you get on that beautiful, beautiful airplane, and can you even remember taking off, how that felt?
Actually, no. I don't really.
Yeah, really?
Uh-uh.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. No reflections on the flight home that you can remember now?
No.
Was there jubilation? What
There could
must
have
you
been,
guys-
but you asked me, and I don't really remember.
Because you would have thought it was just a huge, big party and celebration. The minute the wheels come up.
There probably was, but what upset me more
Were
was
you
that
sober,
stupid watch.
Craig? Got my watch. I gotta go back and get my watch.
But what another little side issue was, not side issue, but point was, when I got into Vietnam and to Tonson initially, was going into those barracks and they're empty. And you're thinking like, man, there was packed full of people at another point in time,
Mhm.
full of people.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah, and then there's another little thing that I found irritating was, remember we had a lot of race riots going on in the late 60s,
Mhm.
where the blacks would stand in the mess line and do their DAP.
Do what?
The DAP.
What is that?
That's like a handshake deal that would go on for 10 or 15 minutes.
Mm.
and then block you out because they're there.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I mean, we've actually come a long, long ways in the race relations.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And so you're coming home, your family knows you're coming home?
Yep. Yeah.
And what did you come back to? What
Golly. I think I flew into like the very main place in California.
Travis?
Travis, and then from there to Portland.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Did your family get to Portland to meet you, or you just came on home?
No, she was staying in Portland, and
Mhm.
so I'm sure she met me at the airport.
Mhm. Was there, and I always want to ask the question about when you got to the airport, were you in uniform, or what was that experience like? Was that like the others at that stage of the game?
Well, I'm sure I had my uniform on until I got to Portland, and then I don't remember changing out of it.
Mhm. But I just wonder if we had gotten beyond that initial 68, 69, where they were at the airport giving the soldiers that time. You didn't
No,
experience
I
that?
didn't run into any of that.
Yeah, that's good.
Right.
Yeah, I always want to ask that question.
Right, that's a good question. No.
Yeah. So now, okay, then we'll just get to the last part of this, where you're back home. You went into the reserves, and you did come back to farming?
Well, actually, yes, to quickly summarize it, but when I got back, then I was assigned to the Infantry Officers Advanced Course at Fort Benning, which is about a year. So then relocated everybody to Fort Benning, went through that course, and then was assigned to Fort Bliss, Texas, and went to my OER efficiency report said I should go back to troops. I said, okay. Well, they sent me there, and there's no troops there. I mean, you know, the only thing they have there is a Armored Cavalry Regiment. I mean, it's a very storied Armored Cavalry Regiment. Whoever is the commander there makes general. Anyway, so we work in the desert there. So anyway, so I went over there and interviewed with them. The end result was it said they didn't want an infantry officer filling a armor officer slot. I said, okay. So then I found a job with the Chaparral Vulcan Battalion.
What is it?
Chaparral.
Chaparral.
Vulcan.
Vulcan.
Like you know, Star Wars, Vulcan.
Okay.
Okay, and what it is an air defense battalion
Hmm.
that would support this armored cavalry regiment. And so they made me an assistant operations officer, which I was trained for. I didn't know much about their missiles and all that kind of stuff. So that was interesting for about a year. And then meantime, co-located with that unit is the Sergeants Majors Academy.
Hmm.
The U.S. Army Sergeants Majors Academy. It trains the highest ranking Army, Marine Corps, and Navy enlisted people.
Hmm.
And so working out at the gym, I met some of the people working there. And I finagled my way and I got assigned there. So I spent about 3 years at the Sergeant Majors Academy, first on the staff and then in the faculty.
Interesting.
And a really, really great group of people there.
I should say.
And it's still in existence. It's run now pretty much by NCOs. When I was there, they had a full colonel and a bunch of officers. And
These would be the gung-ho folks.
yeah, I mean, at this point in time, they were like 2-year Vietnam, 3-year tours. In fact, one of the most interesting people I ever heard to speak was he was a master sergeant, and he'd been a POW. He was a special forces guy, captured up in MR1, up the Quang Tri area, and the speech he gave for the soldiers there, once classmates, so all the stripes up and down their sleeves. So he explained how he got captured, and that how he tried to escape, and got beat up, and then almost made it back to the lines, and then the Americans fired at him because they didn't know who it was. And then he said by the time he got up to Hanoi, he had like 100 feet of rope wrapped around him, he said. Anyway, so, but...
He did go to Hanoi Hilton?
Well, I don't know, he got north. And then I still remember this little anecdotal thing. He said that his captors were always after him to write a confession. So one day, he said, he wrote one, and he said that the North Vietnamese people are revolutionary and they are truly revolting. Of course, we would pick that up English-wise, right? The double entendre. Anyway, so it took a while before somebody who understood English to get hold of it, and then he paid for it. But yeah, it was very interesting, this presentation.
He made it through.
Yeah.
And he went on to be a career.
Well, he was a master sergeant at that time.
Big rep.
But he had been POW for 5 or 6 years.
Amazing.
Right.
Amazing.
So anyway, so after that, then I went to Fort Bliss, then I went to, you have a secondary specialty as an officer. So I had infantry, and then I had foreign area officer, which is like
What is
foreign
that?
area officer.
Which is?
Is attaché duty advisor, and so they have a 6-month course at Fort Bragg. So I got selected for that, and then went to Fort Bragg. Very interesting course. They have little seminars divided into geographical areas, and so I have almost a Spanish minor. Of course, they put me in the Africa one. But as it turned out, it was just phenomenal because I knew nothing really about Africa, and most people don't. They may know a little bit more now, but at that time they didn't know really anything. And we had people who had been assigned there and worked in like South Africa or in Kenya, and they'd been through all that whole area. They knew all the people, and it was really interesting. And you had to write like a thesis kind of thing. And so that was for 6 months, and then I got followed up on that, getting assigned to troops. So I got a job over in Korea, company commander in Korea.
Oh, you went to Korea?
No, not yet.
Oh.
So then on my way home, I got this call from my brother about coming back to farm. We had a large farm, 8,000 acres, and because the foreman was going to retire, my other brother decided he wasn't going to work with the other brother, he was going to do some other things, and so my other brother was, the two brothers, who was the manager, so he needed some help. So I said, well, let me see. So, okay, we decided to do it, and I called up my mentor, kind of colonel, and he says, check into Fort Lewis pending resignation. So I went to Fort Lewis, 30 days later I was out of the Army.
Out of the Army.
And into the reserves.
And did you ever get homesick for that gorgeous farm that you come from?
Oh, I mean when I was in the Army?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just the most beautiful, scenic piece of land. Just.
Well, it's kind of like what General Mattis was talking about, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, coming to the north. Oh,
Mhm.
yes, north. Yeah, just special. But so you come home and you farm. You're in the reserves, and then you went into teaching.
Yes, because the farming thing, we farmed for like 23 years, 4th generation farming, and economically it just wasn't going to work. This is before the wheat price like doubled and all that. So it just economically it wasn't going to work. It was starting to eat up our equity. And so my brother and I decided we're in partnership with my brother and my mom and dad, and that we're going to stop. And basically we did. It was like 1/3 owned, 2/3 leased. Turned all the leases back. We had a lot of equipment, sold the equipment off, paid some debts off. We had to sell some land to pay debt off, and found something else to do.
Yeah.
So then, as you indicated earlier, I did, that I had a master's degree, right? So I actually had a teaching certificate that I had earned at the same time, I never used. And so I went into Oregon, and they said, well, you got to take these courses to update it. I went to Washington, and they says, oh, you got one? Yeah, okay, well, we'll honor that, right? We'll just update it. So I started substituting in Oregon, Military Water, and Washington, and Walla Walla. And, but the job I got wasn't related to that history at all. It was doing the automotive instruction at Walla Walla High School. And so I got certified in that, and some ASE certified areas also. So I did that for 10 years.
And retired how long ago from that?
2 years.
2 years
yeah,
ago,
right.
not too
So,
long ago.
yeah.
Did you like that job?
It was phenomenal.
I bet.
Right. I didn't have to meet any kind of teaching standards like they have for biology, well, more like math and English and all that. It was a hands-on. The kids liked being there, and I had an advanced course. I could kind of pick who went into it.
Great.
And worked really well.
Yeah, I bet. All I can say, Craig, an amazing, zigzagging, unusual experiences from the time you joined the service.
Yeah.
I mean, from soup to nuts, you have done it. Now, looking back on your military time, what have you taken away from being in the military?
Well, I guess it's sort of not nostalgic a little bit. I like the camaraderie. I like the danger. The infantry class type A personality. And I guess it's like the excitement. And the other thing too is that you're with your peers. By that I mean a similar age group. It's unique.
The bonding.
Well, but I mean you're the same age or similar ages. I mean, you have the colonel's only like 40, and you're in your 30s, and the other guys are in their teens or 20s. It's a very young group of people.
Right.
So that was fun too.
You bet.
Yeah.
And in coming home, did you join any veterans organizations? Stay in touch with your buddies?
Only one. And he was, I met him at the Sergeant Major's Academy and maintained contact with him. And he actually ended up being, got a master's degree in electrical engineering, and he was on the Star Wars project.
The Star Wars? Wow.
Star Wars, right.
Wow, amazing.
Well, the
Now-
SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative thing.
Wow. Now, the other side of your personal side of life, children?
Two. The wife I mentioned earlier on,
Hesitate.
we
Go ahead.
we divorced
Okay.
a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
And
Two children?
We have 2 children from that marriage, and I remarried. I've been married to my current wife 25 years, and she has 1 child. So we have 3, all girls.
You want to name their names?
Sure.
Uh-huh.
Tammy and Lori are mine, and then Shelby
Okay.
is my wife's daughter.
All right.
And Shelby lives in California by Torrance. The other 2 live here in Walla Walla.
And your wife's name?
Karen.
Karen.
Right.
Excellent.
And I have 2 brothers. One lives here. The other one just moved to, I can't remember what, Haley, Idaho.
Mhm.
Right. The one I was partners with.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I
I'm the
could-
sister, too.
Yeah, if I could add to the tape here, your mother, who I knew very well, went to my church, and lovely, lovely lady. I might add that, put that in there.
She's a veteran. She was a veteran.
You know, I guess now that you say that, I do remember that.
Yeah.
And was it Army or?
Women's Army Corps.
Yes.
Right. She was
My
like a corporal.
goodness. Wow.
I can't believe it. She went all the way across the U.S. It's like, and she's only this tall, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And they taught her how to fire like 50 caliber on the East Coast. And I can't remember if I think I asked her if she ever fired it. She said, well, I wasn't sure if they ever fired it or not.
Well, she was an amazing lady. Did she influence you as far as your military? And was your
No,
dad in
she-
the military?
Well, my dad was in the military in like an ordinance stuff. And so he never really influenced me too much. He thought it was bad I got off active duty, but and then I made it through all those years and retired as lieutenant colonel, so
Did
got
well.
that taken care of.
You bet, you did very, very well. Well, it has truly been an amazing journey, Craig, and you're not even halfway there yet. And I do know one thing, you love working out at the Y, I know that.
Yep,
You
yep.
got your buddies there. Any other hobbies, anything that?
Well, I windsurf in the summers, which people think that's kind of weird because I have a neck injury I have to watch, and people say, well, like, isn't that hazardous?
Mhm.
But it's not really.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
So I do that, and then my weight lifting and stuff helps immensely with that.
And I know you're very diligent.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun now. It's kind of got a little social clique,
Mhm.
you know, going on. And the people we meet, like yourself,
Mhm.
and versus when we've now last 2 years gone to Southern California and spent the winters there.
Mhm.
Nice little gym there, but it's like nobody really knows anybody.
Mhm.
I've met a couple of trainers there
Mhm.
that work there, and they're nice young guys. But it's not like the Walla Walla where it's kind of a social entity thing
It
going
is.
on. And
It really, it helps with the exercise. If you don't necessarily like exercising, you look forward to just seeing the folks there.
Right, right.
And good story swapping.
Right, right.
Is there anything that I did not cover that you want to add at the end of the interview, that's something I may have missed? And Vic, do you have any questions also?
The only other thing, or question I'd have is any religious experiences in the service?
no, when I was in the service, it really wasn't Christian, even though I'm baptized in that Presbyterian church that you go to. So no, but I did go all the way across from when I was at Fort Bragg down to Texas and became a Christian with my friend there.
Mhm.
So and then back up to Washington State, so it wasn't a straight route.
Right, right.
And that was like in the 70s, when I got off active duty. It seemed like everything happened after I got off active duty. Nothing really happened. I mean, I did a lot of things, right?
Yeah, you were.
But so anyway, so aside from that, Vic, it probably is, but that was the big deal.
Uh-huh. And again, I think I asked you two questions in one, But anything I have missed that you want to add that I didn't ask
Well, I was
you?
trying to think of any funny little anecdotal things,
Mhm.
but no, I really enjoy the military service. In fact, I like talking with Al. We liked it too.
And we might put Al in the video here. Al is...
Al Caneto.
And he is a Vietnam
Yes.
veteran, yeah.
And then,
For the record.
okay. What's interesting too is that when I was teaching at the high school, I would, during Veterans Day, I would call it Veterans Week.
Mhm. Just take your time.
Anyway, to work Al into this, I told I got to bring in this song. It's by Big and Rich, right? This country group,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure how I heard about it, but it's called the 8th of November. Anyway, I didn't think this was
It's
going
okay,
to
it's
affect
okay.
me. Okay, so 1965, and so I was talking to Al about it. He said he was in that battle.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It,
Should I have some handkerchiefs or
Of
something?
course. I should have.
Here's a clean handkerchief.
Oh.
That is not. I thought it was. I
We
usually-
usually, we do have cleans. We got-
Well, usually I have a handkerchief
You
or
can
something.
use the whole thing.
All right, all right. Thank you.
Sorry
All
about
right.
that. I should have thought to do that.
Yeah, I didn't do this with Al when I was talking to him.
Yeah,
So I said, "Al."
it's okay though. I'm sure he's cried. I know he has cried too. And do you know, we have a lot of tears in this room. We do. It's a very emotional stories.
Anyway, so I would do that. And then either the History Channel or they call it American AMH channel, American Movie Heroes or something. They had Medal of Honor recipients, and so I taped those and showed them to the kids.
Mhm.
So
That's fabulous. Fabulous. The more exposure, the better. And maybe I asked you this before, Craig. Did the kids know your background, your service, and did they ever ask you about your service time?
well, a lot of particularly when I first started, I would tell them, and then as years go by, it's like,
Yeah.
But they would ask me different things.
Were they?
Yeah.
With real interest.
Yes,
Curiosity.
right.
Mhm, yeah. Probably the type of classes that you were teaching too was maybe a difference.
Probably,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
It was more hands-on stuff, and you had a little more redneck people, and
Sure.
but the Mexican kids, and there weren't Nicaraguans; they were Mexicans.
Mhm.
But they were really good kids too. But I would have the 4x4 people and then the Honda people. Anyway, but they were all really pretty good about
I'm
the stuff.
sure, I'm sure.
And
Yeah, not to belabor the 8th of November, you just, for the record, would you explain what that meant?
well, the 8th of November was a battle with the 173rd Airborne Brigade that our friend Al was in, which he wrote that article about for the Vietnam Veterans magazine.
Mhm.
And it's a really poignant song. The beginning part of it is done by Chris Christopherson,
Mhm.
and I think he either wrote or co-wrote it,
Mhm.
and specifically picked Big and Rich to sing it.
And you just casually mentioned it to Alan, he was there.
Yeah,
It's amazing,
Yeah.
yeah, very amazing. Yeah. It's been-
well, because he was writing the article, I think that's what kicked it
Oh,
off.
Gotcha.
It was, 8th of November, I said, yeah,
Mm.
that one? Yeah,
Amazing, it's
Yeah.
really, yeah, right here in Walla Walla.
yeah.
Yeah, the conversation. Well, my goodness, like I say, what an amazing journey. And Craig, thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to come in and share your story. It's just been not only entertaining, but interesting how you served us. And I just have a special place in my heart. Now, I'm going to get emotional, obviously, for the Vietnam veterans, because we just want to honor you meant so much, because you just, it didn't turn out as it should have turned out. And you're all patriots.
Well, thank you. But it is kind of tragic. I know Al's been to the wall a couple times,
Mhm, mhm,
and I have too.
mhm.
And
You never prepared for it. No, never. I've been, and it's war, like we have said before, if you haven't been to war, there's no way you can ever explain it to people. But this is a tool to try and leave a legacy for those in the future that can listen and try to glean, even though, you know, God forbid, nobody wants to go to war, but this is a good way of just thanking you and having the future generation. What was it really like? And this is a fabulous tool to explain it, so thank you again.
Well, thank you. And I'm sure my angle is going to be different because it's a little different. Most people didn't do those weird things that I did through. They think
It's-
of the infantry assignments or this assignment.
It's very unusual.
Yeah.
I mean, you just were never,